Hi, and welcome to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money, and investing. I'm your host, Ray Treverson from OTG Capital. We broadcast locally on Radio Northern Beaches and around Australia on the Community Radio Network. I'm really pleased to welcome back to the microphone somebody who hasn't been on for a little while. She's been a regular on our show over the years, and I do say years now, given that the show's actually been going close to 5 years now. Wow. And Philippa Hunt, who you may know, operates a website called Wise Girls Money and has been in the finance industry for an awful long time. And I'm saying greatest of respect because we don't like to talk about people's age these days. Welcome back to the show, Philippa.
Thank you, Ray. It's a pleasure to be here, particularly on International Women's Day.
Well, that's the reason that I gave you a bell, and the CRN gave me an interesting email saying, we're reaching out as International Women's Day is in a couple of weeks. So again, depending on the time of when you actually get to hear these, ladies and gents, whether it's online or on a radio show or in regional Australia, I wanted to touch base with you all to see if you'll be producing a special episode in celebration of International Women's Day. Now, I thought that would be a great reason to reach out to my good friend Philippa Hunt, because we have over the years, I think, gone over and above on many instances to try and highlight the plight of working women, of pension age women, of young women, of women in work, women in unpaid work, and again, the whole basis around financial literacy. So Philippa, welcome back to the show. I guess the one thing, if I hadn't got this email, I guess International Women's Day is not something that has been on my radar for a while. Is it something that's been on your radar?
It comes around annually, and there are a lot of activities for the whole week across various different organisations. A lot of firms, particularly when they're dealing with women's careers, legals, family law, they do have celebrations for International Women's Day.
So what, they have a morning tea and a bit of a recognition of the
yes,
ladies on staff, etc.?
Lunch. And so this time of the year, there's pretty much a flurry of activity specifically aimed, because it's international. And so women all around the world celebrate. And you know, it's become very much mainstream now. Still a lot of work to do in women's affairs, particularly around the outcomes of domestic violence. So this time of the year is around highlighting, I suppose, the things that women celebrate, as well as the achievements that we still have yet to go through and get done.
I guess the reason that I ask about the relevance and the prevalence of women's functions and the like is that the pervasiveness of, over a year now of the new Trump administration, where they have gone very anti-DEI, diversity, equality, and what's the I for? Hang on. In other words, inclusion. Now, I hate to say it, but minorities and the other half of the gender balance is firmly in the targets, and certainly with the rhetoric and some of the actions that have transpired in policy, not just in talk, but in actual policy and funding decisions that have occurred in the United States administration, and their impact on financing, in aid programs right around the world, is undeniable. And so on upcoming International Women's Day, I tend to believe, as a man, I'm looking at it going, it's a bit under threat. Would you agree with that summation?
That part of the world, most definitely. And it's created a lot of pushback. I don't think anyone ever foresaw the damage that has been inflicted, and certainly American people didn't see it coming. If they had any idea that they would be where they are now, they would unlikely to have ever voted him in.
Well, I would push back on that, Philippa. These guys told them exactly what they were going to do. They published their Project 25 documentation.
They dressed it up, Ray, I'm sorry to cut across you, but the promises, everything was going to be made lower. Grocery prices, cost of living, affordability, And they're the things that matter to everyday people. And that was what the campaign promise was, particularly no new wars. So over there's a lot of disarray, particularly in the
quite
last
topical,
week.
isn't it? Yeah.
And so we all knew a year ago, when all of this suddenly started to emerge, we all knew that this was going to go down the path. I don't think anyone saw that it would go to be so extreme. And so one person is being booted out today that was the driver of a lot of this, a woman. And so in America, they have a lot of work to do to repair, which will take time. But for the rest of the world, what it's done is highlight the situation over there. And we're now looking at what we do. Other countries are checking in with what they do. And just because that leader over there has done this in that country doesn't mean that we're all following suit.
I certainly agree with that sentiment, but let's focus specifically on the elements around the finance industry and the finance profession. So I guess over the years, what has financial literacy and financial independence meant to you as a woman and to your female clients over these years?
Well, I've been conducting a lot of sessions with the grant from the Future 2 Foundation, and women have gone through the Wise Girls Money Academy program, and they've all said, every one of them. In fact, one of them said to me, "Where were you 3 years ago when I was going through my separation and divorce?" Excuse me? And I said, yep. And so a lot of the women who have come through this program, 2/3, I would say, are going through separation, divorce, and said, "I wish we had known this earlier." I said, yes. There's been a real push for education around financial literacy, especially for women taking control, because there are many more 30-year marriages coming unstuck now. They call them the grey divorces, I think they're called.
Wow.
And women are saying, well, I can do this. And they don't want to stay in marriages or relationships or situations where they're miserably unhappy when they can afford to get out. And so there's a lot of women who are now managing money properly for the first time on their own. So it's quite valuable. And I think there's been more of a push towards women becoming more educated about their money, how it works, why it works the way it does, and what they can do in their skills, upgrade their skills and money confidence. So, yes, put a lot of women through the program now, and it's working very well.
So again, just to recap, ladies and gentlemen, so the Future 2 Foundation provided a grant to Philippa's organisation, and that grant has been put to work by providing education. Very, very quickly, Philippa, can you tell the audience a little bit about the work that you've done with Queen Chilenga over in Kalgoorie as well?
Yes. The women over in Kalgoorie were a specific group, and many of those were migrant women, which is this program's ideal for, because coming from another country, other cultures, different languages, and creating a new life here where they're productive members of society, getting educated, working, paying their taxes, raising their kids. Our financial systems are something that they have to learn how to deal with. They've not had the experience of it because where they come from, they don't have the systems that we do here. So teaching them financial literacy was also about teaching them how the Australian money system works. So they didn't even understand really what superannuation was for. They just knew they paid it. But by the time they came out the other end of it, didn't just know what it was for. They found out what they could do with it and why it works the way it does and all the rules around it. So it was hard, but you know what? These women are studying. I had the privilege of working with them and understanding their culture, their attitudes and beliefs around money and the way it works in their life for their culture, which I didn't know before. So adapting between cultures is a big deal for them, and helping it sort of integrate with the way they have to learn how to fit in with our financial system. So it was terrific. There were one or two younger women in their early 30s in the mines, and so they're setting themselves up for their future. So their skills that they were learning were hands-on skills, what to do with what I've got. But
That's
also
great.
navigating the financial system for them was really important, because then they can understand how they could set themselves up for their own future.
So, harping back then, when you first started your career in finance specifically, do you still see the same issues coming through that you saw when you first embarked on your career in finance as a woman? And I'm talking now, I'm asking you very specifically your very personal experience, not an industry-wide summation, but what you saw when you first started compared to what you're seeing today. Is there a lot of difference, or do you still see the same old bugbears coming through?
When I started 25 years ago, women were small in number. It wouldn't have even been 20% in the industry. And I can remember when I first got my license, there were only 12 women in the country. I was one of them who actually had their own license, financial services license. So that's changed over time with the education standards coming through. More women have seen financial planning as a very good career, particularly owning your own business. So there's been a lot of growth and development. Certainly not to the extent, of course, men will always be 3/4 of the industry. However, more and more women are making it their career. Many more women are coming into finance as a career. This is over a quarter of a century, remember.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, all the old, I would call dinosaurs, within the first 10 years, they were gone. They'd retired out, sold up, because we had Future Financial Advice Reform. We had Financial Services Reform Act, and then we had the Royal Commission. And so education requirements changed, and people who really wanted to stay did. And so, yes, we lost thousands of advisors out of the industry, and now they're all highly qualified professionals, as it should be. And so women are forming a core of the advice industry now, and hopefully bringing more women in as well. So you get this diversity through of people with different skill bases setting up their own businesses. One of the advisors under my license went and got her own financial services license last November. And so she's gone out on her own with a colleague, and the two of them, women, have set up. And hats off to them, because in this regulatory environment, particularly with the consumer scheme of last resort coming in, where we in the industry and our clients are being bashed and forced to pay for what's the miscreants over in Shield and Guardian. So there's a lot of pressure.
That's another subject for another day, I guess.
But I'm going to simply say, even with the women coming in, setting up their businesses, it's a whole different business model that's changing from when I started out all of those years ago.
Sure. Well, look, we're just about half time here on Dollars and Making Sense. I'm here with Philippa Hunt from Wise Girls Money. You're on Radio Northern Beaches and also around the country on the Community Radio Network. We're going to take a short break and we'll be back with you in just a moment. Hi, and thank you for listening to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly radio program about finance, money and investing on Radio Northern Beaches and nationally on the Community Radio Network around Australia. The views, comments and opinions aired during our program should not be construed or viewed as financial advice. Any commentary is general advice only and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation or needs. You should consider whether the advice is suitable for you and your personal circumstances. If in doubt, you should contact an authorised licensed financial planner. We welcome questions and feedback, and you can get in touch with us via our blog, social media channels or email. Please search for Dollars and Making Sense in your favourite podcast platform or check out our blog at otgcapital.com.au/blog. Hi, and welcome back to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money, and investing. I'm your host, Ray Treverson. Really pleased to welcome back to the microphone Philippa Hunt from Wise Girls Money. We are talking today about women's issues on International Women's Day, and we have been talking about financial literacy and the impact that having financial literacy and knowledge about how finance works and being able to manage your own money has impacted women's lives and their ability, I guess, to stand on their own 2 feet and not be quite so dependent on sometimes men that aren't looking after their own interests, their women's interests as much as they possibly should. So we covered off a little bit about that in the first half of the show. I guess moving on, given where we are today now, it's 2026. I think the financial advice industry has stabilized somewhat. We've got, as you mentioned just before we went to break, we've got a lot of very qualified people now in the industry. They're professionals. We have a professional body, and I think the industry is viewed on a lot more professionally these days than they would have possibly 5-10 years ago. What would you say are the top 3 issues that women face today when focusing on finance and financial literacy? What do you think are the 3 top issues?
I think longevity is the first one. How do you make your money last up to 30 years in retirement? Baby boomers are lasting longer. I've got clients who are going into old age now. And I can tell you that women living much longer, if they don't get money into superannuation through their 30s and 40s and 50s, they're not going to do so well in retirement.
Okay, so the impact, for example, that you only have to look at the ABS stats, women are outliving men by an average of 3 to 4 years, so between 3 to 4 years. So that has impact immediately. Okay, so longevity, that's the first one. What's the next one?
The other thing is when relationships change and women go through separation and divorce in their 50s, superannuation contribution limits end at age 75. So it does help to get more money into super in retirement. I think it's the fact that women really don't understand superannuation by comparison with understanding how property works. Australians are obsessed with property. However, superannuation is their nest egg that's going to support them in retirement and look after them. In fact, one woman said to me, she was a retired theatre nurse, never married, never had children, but because she'd been working all her life in the state system, she had superannuation all her life. And she said, Philippa, that's the man who looks after me and takes care of me. So I call him Max.
Very good. I like that. I like that.
Borrow that. I love it.
And I think one of the aspects, because you're right, we are very real estate focused because it's such a dominating element of people's families' net worth. But superannuation, because of its tax status and the fact that it's designed to help you retire in comfort, I'm still hopeful that we're going to get a lot more clarity in reforms and also legislation that really, I think, nail down what super is for, because it's still becoming, and too often is a political football. But I think there's a lot more stability coming ahead given the potentials. Okay, so we've covered longevity and relationship changes. Is there a third, or is it a melange of others?
Poverty in retirement, Ray.
Poverty?
Yeah, because if they don't have enough superannuation and they're going to rely on $25,000, $27,000 a year of age pension. So I say to women, if you have the option, and this is an if, of owning your own home and a fair chunk in superannuation, that plus the age pension, you will be okay in retirement if you're on your own. So what I try to do is paint the picture that if they don't have enough superannuation in retirement, who is going to look after them? Because a lot of women will I've heard these appalling stories where they lose everything as part of divorce. They have to start again in their 50s, and they've only got roughly 20 years to put money into super. But they don't earn as much as men, and in their 50s, there probably is their maximum income that they're going to earn as well. And on top of all of that, in their 50s, they're facing the biological changes in their lives with menopause and their health. And so that's another top issue for women in maintaining good health to make good financial decisions. And that's a whole field in its own right.
It's interesting you say that, because it dovetails very nicely into my next question around how does a woman's age correlate to these issues, and are they different as women age? I think you've answered a lot of that, but I mean, when a woman walks into your office and says, "Hi, Philippa, I need your help," when you first lay your eyes on this client, this potential client, I guess in my own mind's eye, you are doing a summation very much based on age first up, aren't you?
Well, it's a life stage. Because the one thing I've found with running this course of mine, that women in their 30s grab what I'm teaching them and apply it, and they're very enthusiastic about it because they're starting out, and it gives them a real skill set and framework and competence to create the future that they want. By the time a woman goes through perimenopause in 40s and 50s, menopause, the effect of that on their health, mental health, emotional health, and well-being is huge. And so I find that when women have different language around money, if they're in their 30s, they're aspiring, 20s, they're starting out, 30s, they've got something bedded down, but they need to learn more and how to achieve it. By the time they get to 50s, a lot of them have bought a home at least once. They're now trying to figure out how to take care of themselves. So the different life stages is the different language that I use around money and how it operates in their life for their age stage, and what they can do on their age stage to prepare for the second half of their life.
Okay, some really good pointers there, Philippa. So age certainly does matter. I guess, and sadly, I asked this question with a little bit of tinge of sadness in my voice, but I guess as men, we've still got a long way to go, haven't we?
With respect,
I think understanding, I think, you know, there's a lot of wise sayings out there, idioms, but I think the ability for men to seek to understand a woman's situation, I think, goes a long way to women having financial literacy, having financial independence, even in a solid marriage. I find that, you know, having clarity around, you know, both partners, and I guess a financial independence that says to either party, I can go out and do as I wish, obviously with consultation in our relationship. But I'm just suggesting that, you know, if men continue to keep on seeking to understand women's situation, because we don't go through menopause, we go through, I guess, different life phases, and probably, you know, that middle-age crisis thing of, you know, having to buy a fast car or whatever. I don't know. I certainly, you know, had mine in my 40s when I needed to have a low-slung sporty model. But I guess I see a lot of guys at that age are aging in different ways, but it's not so much a, you know, does the waterworks work in the same way? And so the menopause, perimenopause kind of issues that face women in their 50s aren't being faced by men, but they are facing, I guess, more psychological things. And as you rightly sort of say, you know, a lot of women do change their lifestyles at that time. The kids are growing up, the kids are now off and running. And if they haven't had the best of relationships, women are now walking with their feet and their wallets and saying, we've had enough, and they're moving on. This is, I guess, where I'm talking about, you know, do men still have a long way to go? I mean, I know many of my friends that did end up getting divorced. Pretty well all of them were shocked and surprised. They didn't see it coming. Is that what your experience is with the women that finally pull the pin and say, I've had enough?
yes, in a nutshell. The other thing is that what men don't experience, I suppose, when I look back, and I'm talking to a lot of women who are going through their 40s, women around me, they're fully well aware of what's coming at them, and they take steps to manage it. And because this is something that women go through, and here's the thing, in the very first module of the course, I talk about hormones, women's neuroscience, the way our brain is wired, and our biology, because that's fundamentally how we operate. So when a woman understands more about her own physiology and how that affects her mental health and emotional and physical health, and the treatment that you can get to support you through that, the educational piece for men, I think, is understanding that when women's hormones change, so do they.
Yeah.
And if they ignore it or don't understand it or don't take the time out and trouble to come to understand what's going on for the woman, she feels isolated. And I've heard women say this. And then they say, well, what happened to the girl that I married? And she said, because the caring hormone, estrogen, ain't there anymore. Well, I don't care. And so, and as you say, sometimes they're blindsided. And there's a wonderful book that your audience might be interested in. It's called The Female Brain. And I recommend this book to anyone who can find it on Amazon, by Dr. Luann Brizenden, B-R-I-N-Z-E-D, Brizenden. And it's about the role of estrogen from conception. And I couldn't put the book down, and I just recommend it to anyone, particularly men who have daughters, women in their life. And as one man said, the only other male in the family is the dog, and we go outside. He's got daughters, and he said been through it all. And,
okay.
Yeah,
well, Philippa, we're just about out of time, believe it or not. I have a bunch more questions, but we really have run out of time. Some really good food for thought. I'm going to, if you can send me through the details of the Female Brain, I'll post that with our blog. Philippa Hunt from Wise Girls Money, thank you so kindly for being with me here to celebrate International Women's Day. And I continue to hope and move forward on the basis that DEI is not dead. And that we'll keep on hoping for diversity, inclusion, and equality as being good things to go for. And being woke is totally cool as far as I'm concerned. Let's keep being humans and caring and sharing for each other. Philippa, thanks so kindly for being on Dollars and Making Sense.
Thank you, Ray. It was a pleasure.